present the film 2040, and it was to an audience of philanthropists and investors and smart business heads willing to put their money where their mouth is or where their values are. And 2040 was pitched, and it was amazing to listen to Damon's vision and all these incredible storytellers pitch ideas of how we can reimagine the future and be able to change. And storytelling is the most powerful form of humans' ability to change and activate where we need to go. And so it's an honour to be on stage with you, and you've gone on to make a few others.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kit. Nice to be here with you too. I'm probably pretty biased, but I do think, as you alluded to, that sometimes we get bogged down in all the stats and the data and the graphs, and that's kind of not how we've evolved to tell stories. And those stats are important, but if they're not encased in narratives that stir and move people to action, we're not going to get to the places that we need to get to. And I think that's no one's fault, but we've just relied on saying, well, here's another graph, surely this will get you over the line. And that's sadly just not how we wired. And then if you look at the storytelling that's going on now, our ecosystem of storytelling, it is again perpetuating certain values that certainly see us as separate and superior to nature, certainly see us polarised with each other. Like no Hollywood film ends where the good person realises the villain was behaving this way because they had some childhood issues or something, and they came together. It's just always an othering, you versus me. Even a show like Survivor, I'd say, which is the highest rating show of all time still, is a dog-eat-dog survival of the fittest narrative. Like, what if that show was called Survivors and was about all those people had to find a way to work together to all grow their food and survive? So these stories matter, and they are amplifying how we react to each other and how we react to the world. And as you were talking to brilliantly in the previous talk, there is a story of our economic system that says we have to keep growing, we have to keep expanding, we have to please our shareholders. And most people are oblivious to the fact that it is a collective story. We've had different economic systems in the past. We can change this one, but we're all just like, well, no, that's what the world is, isn't it? So I think that's why the role of storytelling is just so important, or artists or musicians, to snap people from that reverie, but also show them visions of a better world that isn't this one. A lot of people are a bit frustrated by the current system. And if we don't show them those visions, they will vote for leaders that promise to make things great again because it's comfortable. That's right. And it's familiar. We haven't, I think, enough showed those visions of what a better world would look like with thriving communities and food amongst our communities and decentralised energy, all these things that we know we've got. So if people can't see that, they're just going to feel fearful, and then they'll retreat. So it's a long answer, but I do think, storytelling is our most potent tool for change, I'd say.
Absolutely, and thank you for being on this planet and being a leader of that. On the news this morning, you did Sugar Me Baby as well, and they said that sugar has actually decreased, their consumption of sugar in Australia. Probably thanks to your storytelling.
Well, I think we were part of a collective, but that was a really good example of making a film with some friends that you just sort of make and you hope it's going to educate and inspire some people. And next thing we know, we were doing screenings in the UK with Jamie Oliver to their parliament, and that led to a sugary drinks tax. And New Zealand banned sugary drinks in their hospitals because of a story.
Yeah.
So this is how potent they are.
Yeah.
And traditionally the Greeks, they use storytelling to inspire people and enlighten them, but we've just used them as tools of distraction now, or numbing, whereas there's an opportunity to really reinvigorate people, which we desperately need.
Yeah, I remember I went to Heron Island and heard Tim Flannery. I don't know if you know of him. He's big fan.
He's this guy who,
big fan. He was instrumental in, the Paris Agreement to net zero targets. And he gave us a kind of health check, as if, you go to the doctor and you want to get your heart checked and your cholesterol and everything. He gave us Mother Earth's health check. And it was frightening. And this was in 2018. And afterwards I was like, oh my God, sound the alarm. Like, hello, this is an emergency. And he said, no, we can't scare people, because if we scare people, they'll give up. We need to give them hope. And I said, can we do it? And he said, we can change. And I said, but do we have the behavioural capability to do so? And he said, we do, and there's one skill humans have that will enable that. And I said, what? I was thinking, is it social media? And he said, storytelling. That is the single most powerful tool that humans have, as you said, from the Greek, that's how we've evolved. We've been able to, the intelligence level has been able to be such that we can share stories and activate change. And yeah.
So do you, from a fashion point of view, because obviously there's, I feel like there's these cultural acupuncture points where we can actually make great change, particularly in Australia. I'd see like sport, if we could get that right, we could have huge impact there. So they're working with scientists to tell better stories. How do you feel about fashion in terms of there is an expression, there's an art form, there's a storytelling to fashion done at certain levels? We're not talking about Shein and whatnot, but so what role do you think that plays, or how do you frame that?
I mean, as I was saying earlier, starting my first fashion label, Willow, and then Kid X, I have always told stories of the women that are making the garments, or, the sequin has come from my grandmother's ring that I then embossed, to replicate that. And then that story, the customer hears it and feels it and buys it and shares it. And so that's where storytelling in fashion, and you see it with Chanel, and you see it with, the Birkin handbag, the, Hermes handbag, Jane Birkin. There's a whole story, and then the craft of the people that are making it. So that is what people are buying. What we have forgotten, like you said, is that we are nature. We are not superior to nature. We need nature. Nature doesn't need us. We need nature. And we are destroying nature, and we are forgetting the journey that everything that we're wearing in fashion, where it has come from, and the impact that it has had on the earth in that journey. And that's the storytelling part that we've kind of forgotten in this consumer world. Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, we've designed an entire economic system. We're actually a civilization off that story. And I've done some research like tracking where that sort of happened. Where did that collective story start to take shape? And even if you look through sort of the scientific revolution, you had even the father of modern science was a guy named Francis Bacon. And he said that we've got to hound nature in her wanderings. We've got to put her in constraints, enter and penetrate her every hole and corner, subdue her, make her your slave. Right? So this was the preeminent thinker of the time that influenced that period. And so we took that story into the Industrial Revolution, where we extracted and we plundered and we dominated and asserted our illusory authority. And then we've taken that into this kind of hyper-capitalism we've seen now, where there's no room for regulation on anything. It's just open. It's freedom. It's like, come on, we don't need any rules. And so we aren't designing these garments or our furniture or buildings with any consideration of the living world. So that story has infused our entire civilization. I don't think we're going to get to the places that we need to get to unless we start to embed nature at the heart of this economy again. And that's obviously a huge challenge. It's a generational challenge. But I actually took these children, I just did a recent film where I took them to a company in the UK called Faith in Nature. And they're the first company in the world to make nature a board member. So through ecologists and environmentalists, nature has a say in their supply chains, their materials, and it's completely transformed their work. And now there's sort of multiple companies throughout Europe looking at this similar model. So we're at the very, very beginnings, the new shoots of people realising that we can't keep doing what we've been doing. It's impossible. No. Our survival depends on the living world. Yes. But what would it look like 50 years from now to have nature more embedded in our economy?
And then so 2040, which I've seen and loved, how do you think we're tracking from when you had this vision and presented it in 2014? Because we're getting close.
To 2040, yeah. Gosh, it was such a different world. I wrote that film in 2016, actually, and all pre-COVID, all the Trump, yeah. So it was a very, very different time. But So one of the components was like a decentralised energy. So I think we're really close to that. If we had the right regulations and policies to allow that to come in, we could do it. We could decentralise our energy and have our communities with community batteries, rooftop solar. We could lead the world in that. Like we are to a degree, but I feel pretty hopeful that we will get there one day. It might take another 10 or 15 years. I'd say there was a big section around regenerative agriculture, and that's exploded in the last 5 years. I think there's a lot of farmers making that transition, which is really heartening. And even to hear your conversation about these different fibres or regenerative fashion, that wasn't a discussion 5 or 6 years ago. So that's really hopeful. And seaweed was the other big one. So even this Fremantle seaweed, we had 7 people reached out to me and they've started their own seaweed farms just from seeing 2040. So again, this is story. This is story, the power of story. And it's not perfect. There's things we've got to get right there. We can't grow monocultures in the ocean in the same way we can't grow here. But I'd say the biggest frustration that I think is missing in the conversation is that because we keep growing this system bigger and bigger every year, it makes it harder and harder for the right things to cut through. So if you think of all the renewables that we've rolled out across the world in the last few years, it's extraordinary numbers. They're still only meeting half of the energy demand each year. So it's like we've got a huge hole and we're trying to plug the hole, but we're making the hole bigger at the same time. And I think now about what's happening with AI and things, and obviously people talk about the energy required for the data servers and the water. But to me, the biggest challenge is that it's making an already damaging and extractive system more efficient and productive. So we get a company like Temu that didn't exist 5 years ago is now worth $45 billion because they use AI to target people's spending patterns. So our extraction of materials has risen exponentially in the last 2 years, which is climate change. It's the plundering of the earth, of the forest. Our resource extraction is what's doing the damage. And no one's having that conversation. We're talking about all like these ideas. But unless we find a way to rein in this system, we're going to fly off the cliff. And I often use an analogy of, say, our global GDP is $100 trillion every year. We want to grow 3% each year. That's $3 trillion. That's the entire GDP of the UK. So where all the materials that the UK are using, we're putting into the system in a year. And then it gets bigger because it's exponential. So we're on track to double our economy by 2040 and be 7 times bigger by 2100. So that's a suicide mission when it comes to the planet and our waterways that are already bereft of wildlife, and we're doing so much damage. But that's a conversation no government's willing to have, no CEO's willing to have, because we are stuck in this story that says we've got to keep growing and we've got to keep pleasing our shareholders. So unless we have that conversation, I think all of these other things we talk about just become menial, and I'm not sure we're going to do that voluntarily. I think we might need some kind of wake-up call in some way.
I agree. It's almost like, that's what I was saying to, Tim Flannery, sound the emergency, bells. Because the sky is not turning black and it's like, oh no, we need to change immediately. Like when the fires were here in 2020 or 2019, it was like we all of a sudden, the environment was the number one concerning factor in politics, not the economy, for the first time. And because the skies turned red, and but the decisions that we make now today actually impact these beautiful little children that have no decision. They're not making any of these choices about 3% growth and increase in polyester and plastic, and they're not transitioning, fast enough. That's not them, but they are going to be paying the price. Hence, Future Council, which is incredible. I absolutely love that concept, because we are stealing from our children's future. They will not grow up in the world that we have grown up in. They will not. Because we are extracting at a rate of nature that it's going to be very hard on resources, on water, clean water. Food and fibre come from soil. Food will take over on fibre because they're both from soil and we need to eat. Virgin fibres, we didn't get to, Lucianne, but I do believe will be a rarity and a real luxury in the future. So it's what we do now, and your film Future Council was so amazing. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, the idea was, it came off the back of taking 2040 around the world and doing lots of classroom visits. and just being blown away at the level of acumen that generation has. And I think all of us can sometimes, we probably project our own childhoods onto them, but we underestimate how much information they're being exposed to right now, more than any other generation in history. So the ones that are passionate about plastics or fashion or birds or climate really know their stuff. And they know far more than most adults do, to be honest. And so I just had a moment of going, they need somewhere to connect, have a say, because they can just protest on the streets now. That's their only recourse for action. So it just felt like, let's assemble some of these children from around the world. So I chose 8 from 1,200 auditions that we had, and from 8 different countries. And we went on this crazy adventure across Europe to understand how we lost our connection to nature and how we reconnect again and how important it is. But then also they asked me to go and meet certain companies. So I was able to get them to visit the CEO at Nestle, ING, and Decathlon, which is this huge sporting goods retailer, so the children could express their concerns, but also collaborate with these people and say, hey, we've actually got something to say right now. And I watched these CEOs put up the full corporate veneer to begin with, and they were just like giving the kids platitudes. And suddenly there's a 13-year-old girl from Singapore citing ING's climate risk assessment report from 2022. And they were like, oh no, okay. And it was so magical because I think we don't want the children to feel like they have to solve the problem. We don't want them to understand the complexities of this system or geopolitics. It's such a mess. But what they do bring is this refreshing creativity in this moment that we need. They sit outside of the system. They haven't been polluted by the system. So there's kind of a wisdom in their inexperience.
Yes.
And I think that's what we can unleash. And I've seen that now in rooms, and these people go, oh, that's a great idea. It's like, yeah, it is. So I think they realise that, and also they bring this much-needed morality, which we've lost. These companies are acting like psychopaths, largely. Yeah. And just to have a child say, but what would your children think of the decisions you made in the last quarter? And they just go, I'd never considered that. So that's a potency in itself, without worrying about them doing too much. So the children halfway through filming said, look, we don't want this to be just us 8. Can we invite other children around the world? So we've helped them set up a child-led organisation. It's a not-for-profit. There's a youth committee. There's a youth co-CEO. And we partner children with other companies around the world so they can play an advisory role. They can do research, and they're designing products. Like with Officeworks right now, they're designing the most sustainable stationery they can use in their schools. And they take a clip of the profits and it goes into a fund for them to repair nature. So it's just making them feel empowered. You can design your own future. What do you want to? What does it look like? Yeah. So who knows what it might look like in a couple of years, but we're about to take the film around the world, and millions of kids are going to see it. So yeah, it's very, very exciting and just a joy. Yeah.
How can we see it?
It's been at the cinemas, but it's now, I think from October the 1st, anyone can show it in their community, in their council, at their school.
Netflix,
That'll be next year. Once we've done Europe and America, it'll be on a streamer next year. But for now, people are hosting their own screenings in their communities. Yeah,
which is a great instigator. Yeah. Hopefully, I'm going to.
Well, actually, one of the children is whole thing was fast fashion. So they all had their own superpower, and there was the Australian girl who was in it. It was beautiful. She's actually Jimmy Barnes's granddaughter, and her superpower was bringing music and art to this discussion, which was really valid. And so she wrote a song about her experience on the film, and she's already signed to Universal Music now, and she's off. One of the other girls was big on fast fashion, and she's been now working in Uganda. She's gone over there. She's 12 to help there. And the little boy, Joseph, who's 11 in Indonesia, he has 100 clients. He picks up all the plastic in the river.
That's amazing.
And he now is starting a health clinic and school where you don't pay with money, you pay with plastic. And he's 11. So I'm not sure what you guys are doing, but this is what they're capable of. And they're doing it without any kind of pretentious or precociousness. It's just because they deeply care. And it is, as you said, it's their future that they're going to inherit. So we need to support these children.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like the daily obstacles we think, we can't do that, or we can't do this. But, they don't have that. They don't have that. There's just sky's the limit. It's so powerful. And what that scene with that little girl, was it in Sweden or? Yeah. And she started crying. Yeah, the lake, yeah. And that emotional, what have we done to the animals? And what because we forget what, the impact that we're having on the ecosystem, and they're rendering so many species endangered and extinct on a daily basis, and we never sort of stop and think about that, and think about the actions that we're having and what that has on animals around us. But when children, are presented with this information, it's very emotional. And yeah.
What's your relationship with sort of the corporate sector? Because I know you've done a lot over your journey with sort of going in and talking to these various groups. What's your take on that and their role right now?
I think that, and it being, a businesswoman as well as a creator and an environmentalist, and I understand and small business and all business, you're on this sort of mission to be profitable and make money, and when you are doing well and the sales are great, it's a good vibe and it's a good energy, and you've got to better the margin and lower the cost and sell more, and that there's that machine, and I've been in it, I know it, and this is where I feel like polyester and nylon, is an example of it becoming so cheap while all the natural fibres are going up in price, that the sales of the polyester and nylon is going through the roof. So the system that we've created is not measuring planet price. It's only the capitalist system that we've created as a species, one of many species on Earth, that we think, we can't change. But really, we can change.
Do you think, is there enough... if we scaled natural fibres, though, I feel like we'd still be having a discussion about their impact. So is there also the need for some kind of... What's a circular system of I know there's some reuse, where you're not even buying garment. In fact, one of the most positive stories around is IKEA are about to do this by 2040. Their goal is that you won't buy anything from their shop. You will rent it. And when you're done with it, you return it. They use the timbers and reuse them and turn them into something else. So it becomes a completely circular system. Will we have to do something like that in fashion?
100%. And, I set up the Future from Waste Lab in Melbourne, and with the idea of taking local waste of fashion, because we're discarding it at an unprecedented rate that we can't manage, the earth can't manage, and we take the waste. So I chose one fabric, which was denim, because it's hardy and it's 100% cotton and it's one, shade indigo. And so all the waste denim, jeans and jackets, et cetera, with the boxes and boxes and boxes of them coming in daily. So we removed it from apparel, this company that has a take-back program, and we washed the denim and we air dried it, and then we cut it. And we had students working with us and everything, so we, everything that we wear has a pattern to cut that garment. So we would have our Kid-X patterns, cut the denim, which was quite a creative process because it depends on the indigo shade and everything, how you want it. And then the making part of it is like making anything. You have a production line of sewing. The cutting part is sort of the more time-consuming part. But no soil was used. Very, very little miles travelled to get that fabric. No stress on any natural resource. The water used to wash it was minimal compared to the water needed to grow a cotton fibre. And then every garment, once it's finished, is different. So it's sort of couture waste in a way. And it did people loved it. Consumers loved it. And there's no one silver bullet to solve it, but that is one option, is to, local waste, creativity and community, and, working with local waste and recreating that into future.
Yeah, I love, there's a term for that, remanufacturing industries. So there's a great example in the late 90s in Japan where they were running really low on their metals that they were using. And so the government sort of imposed this ban on, you couldn't throw away a toaster or a washing machine and whatnot. Then they created thousands of new jobs to disassemble those metals and reuse them. And now they recycle 98% of their metals, right? So we have the ability to do this stuff.
We do.
We could, if given the right leaders, implement these type of policies. I just think most people are unaware of these sort of quite nefarious forces that have been up against us probably since the 40s and 50s that have just been eviscerating any talk of regulation. Suddenly that's communist. These people have been doing that very carefully and deliberately. They've polluted our own country with our own climate wars. They're very good at it, and they've largely got Trump into office. So they've just wrapped it all up in freedom, and we can't put these boundaries. You've just got to let things flow. But we're now at this point where, like, we need boundaries. Like, boundaries are important. Boundaries are everywhere in nature. The flow of a river is beautiful because there are boundaries of the bank. Like, we can still flow and have a beautiful life, but they've convinced us that any of that is just instant communist behaviour, and we have to shut it down straight away. And that's done great damage to our culture.
And he's behaving like a communist himself. But anyway.
Yes, do you have a question?
Yes, Beck. I just wanted to say thank you and give you a bit of hope. So I'm a young one at 57. This is my mum, who's nearly 93. All our clothes were made by mum, our toys and so forth. We also work alongside, and most of our friends are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So I wanted to let you know about the First Nations Clean Energy Network. So it's First Nations mob that are doing incredible stuff, and you may already be part of it. Yeah. No, I don't need to stand up. No. It's not about me. It's about all of us, the collective. It's my young niece here as well. I think people are doing amazing stuff, and I was very lucky with my parents because we've always walked the walk and the thing, and I just wanted to give you a bit of hope. So I work at the University of New South Wales. We lead across a whole suite of stuff with sustainability. In the Faculty of Business and AGSM, we work with mob, but we also work with sustainability and shifting that piece. Mum's husband, my late dad, this one's, I think, he was a post-Keynesian economist, so all about redistribution of wealth, equity and climate change. As I said, Mum's only 92. She's a young one. I'm a baby at 57. But I just want to... There's a lot of us that are maverick and leading incredible change like you two. Do a lot of work with the young ones, but also bringing everyone together. And last one, I'm sure you're aware of the New South Wales State of Environment report, which was collated by Dr. Terry Jenke and Dr. Everything. So there's incredible people of all ages really doing stuff. And, of course, Indigrow and the Gameau Rangers working with scientists. There's so much on the ground. But I just want to say thank you for everything you're sharing. But I just wanted to bring a bit of hope because it's like no. I can't even say his name in the US. There's horrific stuff here. I know what you mean, but I've also worked with those companies and we're infiltrating good way. And it's around, and also that thing. There's a lot of us, and I think we've also got to remember that local power of what we can all do, like being here, because all of us. Can feel like we're drowning, right, with despair and thing. And so we've got to talk straight. I'm all for that. Yeah. But just to say within all that, let's just stay connected. Things like this and bring, I know we're talking the converted here, right? But all these things and bringing forward, and those young ones for sure. But let's make sure, we live, on a country that's the longest living culture. And they're, like when you said about seaweed, I was thinking of Mob I Know doing all these incredible things. So let's connect in with everyone, black, white or brindle, and bring together. But thank you. Just wanted to share.
Yeah, there's a, well said. Thank you. I think there's actually a beautiful, for what you're alluding to there's actually a beautiful analogy in nature, which is those particular seeds that live under grasslands or some of the forests that have such a hard outer coating that they require intense fire to actually bloom. And I feel like in this moment we have the heat of our collective rage and the scorched landscapes and the boiling ocean, that maybe they are the perfect conditions to crack open these new seeds. And particularly those new saplings that burst through the soil, which I think are the children. How do we ring fence and protect them, give them the right water and fertiliser so they can grow into thriving, robust forests of the future? So I agree. We've got to balance being honest, because I think most people don't really know where we're actually at. And that is a radical position, to be truthful. And then when you do that, you can move into action, Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Be good, or a discussion point?
I really love that Francis Bacon quote. And I just wondered if you were aware that he was the Attorney General to King James. And so while we also have this narrative of what he was doing to the environment, they were also doing it to women because they were persecuting the witch hunts together. That's
her next book.
I think from the language...
It's interesting because it's actually about objectification. Yeah. So there was an objectification of nature, and the same thing happened to women. And even... the other prominent thinker at the time there was Rene Descartes, who was the father of modern philosophy. And he was telling everyone that animals are just machines. They're mindless machines to be exploited at will. So there's horrific stories of him going to universities and pinning dogs to the board and cutting them open and saying, oh, there's no feelings here. This is just a reactionary response. So these are the two dominant thinkers at that time. And we call it the Enlightenment, funnily enough. And we took all of that thinking into what we have now.
mean, it's almost that it could be the flaw of the human species, really.
Well, the quote that you read out about him poking holes was taken straight out of King James Demonology, which was all about how you torture women, and he was trying to curry favour. So it's super interesting how it's all linked.
I would suggest if you've got a question, put your hand up, or Lucien's just going to be asking them all afternoon. We've got Jess Hill here. How's that over to you, Jess?
Hey, Bernie. Hey, Damon, kid. Actually, you run like my favourite fashion brand, so yeah, just props. And Damon, I've always, wanted to sit and hear you talk, so it's a pleasure to be here. Just, I guess, linking in with what Luciana was saying, working in and around gender-based violence and thinking about where's the solutions to that. What you often come across is one thing that seems on paper to be a good solution actually causes other problems. And I just wonder, where do you come across that in sort of the eco-solution, area? And where are we? I mean, for example, I guess batteries is solar batteries is one thing. How do you dispose of them? But what are you seeing that actually creates more problems potentially?
There's so many examples through history of that. Even this seaweed, all these seaweed farms that are rolling out, this particular type of seaweed, Asparagopsis, which sequesters carbon and alkalises the water. It's like such a win. But only lately they've started to find that in mass numbers it can release this chemical called bromoform, which might be ripping a hole in the ozone layer. So it's just like, oh man. So I think the problem has been that we've developed this culture as well that's like, I think Mark Zuckerberg, the famous Mark Zuckerberg said it, it's like disrupt and break shit. Like there's not that assessment of things now. We're all quick to get to market and be the one to be winning the race, without that careful consideration. I think some of that has fallen into the urgency to deal with climate and ecological problems. That thinking has sometimes been pervasive. So there's quite a few examples of that where there's just been knock-on effects. The famous one where the World Health Organization tried to they went spray the chemicals in Borneo to get rid of the malaria, but then the mosquitoes got infected. The rats ate the rats ate the mosquitoes, and the cats and so everyone got sick, and the crops. It was just a classic example of where we haven't thought through the problem, and I think there's a real risk of that right now because we have this urgency. We need rich, deep, critical thinking that takes time, and we don't give ourselves that time.
Yeah, and I also think like empowering each other, like each individual has so much power to make the right decisions in what dishwashing liquid you buy at the supermarket, in what clothes you buy for an event, and what you wipe your bum with too, like what toilet paper, have trees been cut down? Like every single thing that we consume and how we live has an impact. And so the more that you can be conscious custodian of the earth and the consider the journey that anything that we're buying has had, and you're voting with your wallet, that is very, very powerful. And I actually think that is the only way we can mobilise the shift that we need to see in the short period of time that we need to see it in.
It's a delicate one, though. I think it is. Well, I do think it's important, but I think, and certainly some people would be familiar with this research, but there was an active intention to shift the blame onto consumers. Like BP did it in 2004 with their carbon calculator. Like, you need to know your carbon footprint and cut it down. Yeah. And all the plastic industries have now done as well. You need to recycle. This is how you recycle. And what it does is just devoids responsibility for them. In a sane world, we'd be saying to Nestle or Coca-Cola, our oceans are full of your product. Yeah. What are you doing to go and collect those, or what are the materials you're going to use so they don't end up in our oceans?
We need to do that as well.
That's right. So we need. It's two things. We do need to take responsibility. I agree with you. Yeah. But we also need to actually demand bigger systemic change. And so if we get too trapped in, well, I'm doing my bit and I'm trying to recycle, we both. Actually need to be pushing.
And it's community. It's from the ground. Both are from each individual community and up. It's the same, in Ghana where all the fast fashion, let's separate the brands into labels. Let's see which pile is the highest, and No.
That's your next film, Damon.
That's the next film.
Do it with the young girl in the film, yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating because, yeah, exactly. Because then, okay, Sheen, you have, billions of tons of waste that has nowhere to go. And other than ferment and emit methane and accelerate climate change and never break down and kill dolphins. So who's paying for that? And that, it's kind of that whole, again, it's a circular cycle. Coca-Cola.
Yeah. So do we, I'm not sure how much time we got left, but do you want to, I'd love to, given this lady's provocation, what gives you hope right now? What are you hopeful about and what you're seeing? You needed to answer faster than that.
Okay, what gives me hope is that I do believe that people are good overall. That gives me hope. It gives me hope watching your films and Future Council and listening to my children. And I have faith in humanity. I think that the awareness and the knowledge, so that's why storytelling is so important, is very low. And if the awareness and knowledge rises through storytelling, and that's why it's so important, and word of mouth amongst your community, and it spreads that vibration, I think that then we'll make better decisions. And that's my hope is in humans. And I think that right now we're probably reaching that point where you said the seed is sort of this fire heat kind of on that seed before it bursts. And I think that we're kind of, as bad as everything that is going on in the US, etc., everywhere else in the world, many places, maybe it's that combustion that we need to break it and re-sprout. And I feel like we're coming to that, so let's get ready to re-sprout.
Yeah.
What gives you hope?
Well, that answer, that was spot on. Like, I really agree with you. I do think most people want a better system and a better world. Most people are completely disillusioned with the way we're living right now. The stress, the increased workload, the mental health, all those things. We are ripe for some kind of wholesale change. And we have been stripped of our humanity. We can see that, especially with recent events. In fact, I said it before, I think care and empathy is actually kryptonite to the current system. They don't want us to have empathy and care. So the way we fight back is to care more deeply than we've ever cared before, and to connect with our communities and practice our humanity, because I think we've been hyper-individualised and put in our own little bubbles. I think our first step is to break through that and actually reach out to someone, even if it's awkward sometimes. How are you? Or, and reconnect those fibres. But also I think, like you, I spend a lot of my time seeing just like a dazzling array of innovations that people are coming up with right now. Like it's off the charts, even in the last 5 years. And they don't get any attention because they're not in that main algorithmic outrage spotlight that's so fierce. But in the, Rebecca Solnit talks about hope in the dark. Off to the side of the stage where the spotlight isn't focused, there is an army of people building a new world or telling a new story. And so if you focus on those people, you can't help but feel hopeful and excited for our children's future. But if you get stuck in the main show, it's going to drag you down very quickly. So yeah, that's my hope. I've seen it. It's happening everywhere. And when we are ready to turn, we'll put it in very quickly. It's just what's it going to take for us to finally turn. It's like in your own life. You need sometimes a big event to bring you to your knees to reassess how you've been doing things and change. And I think we might need something collectively like that.
Beautiful. I think on that note, unless there's something else I reckon that was the perfect note to wrap this on. Give it up again for Damon Gameau and